The Isle of Wight Economic Partnership coordinates economic development and manages applications for grant funding on the island. We spoke to the Chief Executive Graham Biss about the changes to the availability of funding over the past year.
Well, I think the economic crisis has put a whole new set of challenges facing business. So I think people are obviously reassessing where they are, where they're going, but primarily grant funding is there to aid and support investment. So there has been quite a big change where investment plans have changed, but the need today is as important and vital for business as it perhaps was before the economic crisis.
So what role does the Isle of Wight Economic Partnership play in grant or loan funding for island businesses?
Okay, historically we have managed over the last 10 years various grant programs on the island, and we continue to do that. We've also been instrumental in actually winning grant programs, again for the island. All of our work is not for individual businesses, but it's for the business community at large. And that's something which we'll continue to do. It's another form of investment, and the island's economy needs as much investment as we possibly can to help it grow and go forward.
So tell me more about the LEADER programme.
The LEADER programme has been funded from Europe. It's part of the Rural Development Programme for England, and it's focused primarily on agricultural and rural businesses with a small element for community groups.
And what does it stand for, LEADER?
LEADER, oh, that's a very good question. It's one of these very complicated European acronyms, but it's very much focused on the rural community. A key part of the LEADER ethos is that it's very much bottom up. So it's about local communities establishing what their priorities are and ensuring that the investment which is available is focused into key areas according to that locality.
So what are the criteria on the island for receiving a LEADER grant?
Okay, well in total over a 5-year period we received funding of 2.6 million, which we were able to add another 100,000 to last year. And it's available up to £50,000 for each applicant. There has to be a match funding, which typically is somewhere in the region of 50%. So for every £1 of LEADER funding available, the applicant has to put £1 in themselves. That does vary, but that's the typical rate. And the funding is assessed in a competitive process, which I think is very important, because at 2.7 million over 5 years is not a large amount, and we're very determined that island businesses maximise the opportunity which this provides. So it's a competitive process, and it's focused upon ensuring that we can drive forward the rural economy, we can support agricultural and land-based businesses, we can support wider rural businesses, and the third category is community groups.
Presumably the funds are provided as a grant rather than a loan?
Yes, it's a grant, and as long as a successful applicant adheres to all the conditions, it doesn't have to be repaid. I think the importance of the LEADER programme is it's relatively small in its amount, but it's pump priming. It's being able to encourage businesses to undertake ventures which perhaps without the grant funding they wouldn't contemplate. And we're already seeing some great successes where businesses have taken relatively small amounts of grant funding and applied to their businesses, and we're seeing employment, we're seeing new businesses being created. So already, even though we're only 1 year in, we're seeing some great success stories coming through.
So it's only been a year?
Yes, it was officially launched last April, but in effect it's only been operating for 12 months.
Okay, is this a new form of LEADER? Was any form around before?
Yes, there was a LEADER Plus scheme, which was much more community focused. This is very much for the economy and business.
So can people apply for it whether they're starting up a business or needing funding for growth or development?
Yep, it's eligible to any rural business. The definition of rural is very much either located in or actually operating for the benefit of the rural areas, and it's eligible for any small and medium-sized business, whether they're at an early stage of development or quite mature, but it's about adding value and additionality.
So how complicated or easy is the process of applying for it?
Well, as you would imagine with public funding, it's important that due process is followed. There is a paper trail. One of the roles of the economic partnership is to try and mitigate that as much as possible, but I'm not going to pretend there aren't formalities to follow. But already businesses have successfully gone through the process, and I would expect many more to be able to do that over the next 3 to 4 years.
How long does the process take?
It can be quite quick. The approvals panel, as I said, it's a competitive programme, so every applicant would go before an approvals panel. They sit every 2 months, so it's virtually a 2-month cycle, but where appropriate and it needs to be speeded up, we do everything we possibly can to ensure that an applicant gets a speedy response. But I would encourage people to allow plenty of time. The more time, the better. And of course, there's always going to be conditions around a project. So it's very important that when that project comes forward, such planning and other legislation is already in place, because we can't grant the funding until all the formalities are there and allowing that project to go forward.
So how much funding has been supplied so far through this programme?
Okay, to date, just under 600,000 has been granted, but there are a further 9 projects which are going before an approvals panel within the next week, totaling somewhere in the region of another 150,000. So we are going through this year's budget quite quickly, but it's about quality projects. That's the key, and we're looking for more and more quality projects to come through which we can support.
Is this an ongoing programme, or has it got a time limit on it?
It runs into 2013. One of our priorities at the moment is to try and secure further funding, because I think the island has already demonstrated that this type of funding we can put to extremely good effect, both for individual businesses and the whole economy. So one of our main priorities is to try and get more funding, which means we can support more good quality bids.